Hey everyone, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. In this episode, we have Sean, who wanted to share him and his wife's experiences that they had in Iowa. Sean describes his wife seeing a shadow figure and some red eyes glowing in the woods. Alright guys, let's dive straight into our next podcast here on Sasquatch Theory. Alright Sean, welcome to Sasquatch Theory, and I appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. If you could, would you tell me a little bit about yourself and your experiences that you've had?
Well, I was actually an investigator and then a criminal investigator in Missouri for the Department of Health and Senior Services. And at that time, I lived in southeast Missouri. My then girlfriend, now wife, and I, we had been out on a county road, and of course the county roads out there are usually poorly maintained and a lot of fun to drive on. It's like going off road just every time you leave the pavement. And we had actually been parked. It was at night, and we were parked by a creek, by a low water bridge. And I've got to say, this was probably the very first thing that happened with the two of us, and it was a total surprise. I was backing up to cross this low water bridge, and my now wife all of a sudden screamed and kind of turned and buried her forehead kind of in my shoulder. And she said, drive. So I drove as fast as I could to get across that low water bridge, and it was kind of not in very good shape, so I couldn't move too quick. Got across it, and then we just kind of flew up that road and got out to the highway. So while we were driving that fast down this old county road, I'm asking her what's going on. And she said that she had turned her head out her window, the passenger side window, and there was a shadow figure standing right there next to the car. And she had never seen anything like that before. She had never seen a shadow person in person or anything like that. And at the time, I didn't make this connection until much more recently. She described this figure as being tall and dark and shadowy, as in, I don't think you could see through it, but it was just a tall, dark mass. But it had a flat brimmed hat, or that looked like the shape of one. I didn't think anything of that. I mean, the whole thing was just weird, and it wasn't until much more recently that I was just looking and just stumbled upon people are seeing this thing, this shadow person with a flat brimmed hat. I know it sounds crazy, but that is what she described, and neither one of us at that time knew anything about those. Mm-hmm. We hadn't watched YouTube videos on it. We hadn't really paid any attention to anything like that. So this was just kind of out of the blue. So we had some other things then happen following that. And again, this, as I say them, I think I sound crazy, but it happened to us. We had gone out to a place also on a county road, and it's where I had lived at one time, and where one of the kids on a bicycle had been chased by something dark. The kids came screaming in, and they said, hey, there's this dark man chasing my oldest on his bicycle. They described it And it was just, I'd never heard of any such thing because of living there later on. And this would have been following my wife's seeing that initial shadow person. We went out there. We drove through and we took some pictures, and we were just curious. And we got back home later that evening, and I don't know what I was doing. Probably watching TV or something. And she says, "What do you see here?" And so she pulls her phone over and shows me a picture that we took. She says, "What does that look like?" And I said, "Oh, that looks like a clown witch's face." And again, I know this sounds crazy as I say it. Again, neither of us were at least at that time into anything like this, but it was a background of leaves, the green leaves of the trees that she had taken this picture before, or in front of. And clearly, it was almost cartoony. A clown. What all I can describe is a clown witch face, and it was as plain as day. And we were both sitting there staring at it and going, "Oh my gosh, what is that? And why is it there?" So we decided we're going to go through the rest of the pictures and see what else we can find. And we went through the pictures. There was another one where there was a figure with red glowing eyes back behind some of the foliage. And we went through all the pictures, and there was no witch clown face anymore. That's the only time we saw it. We didn't delete any. And there were many pictures of just the green trees, things like that. But we both had seen this picture clearly, or this face clearly in this picture, and yet went back and they were just not there anymore. And that's by just going through the collection of pictures from start to finish, and then finding that face, finding the other figure, and then continuing on and going back, and then they were no longer there. I can't explain it, no idea, because I was there. She didn't push any buttons. She didn't, delete anything like that. That was it's just one of those moments we sat there and stared at each other, and at least in my case, the hair started standing up on the back of my neck, and I'm like, oh wow, that's just too creepy. So kind of fast forwarding into more recent, we then moved from southeastern Missouri, and we moved back to my hometown in south central Iowa. And this is where my parents are. We came up here because we felt that it was time to come up here and help them. They're getting older, and so we've been staying with them just to get stuff done around the grounds and cutting trees down, things like that, and cleaning up. And when we first got here, and my wife and I were just speaking about this, and we're trying to figure out when did this happen that I'm about to tell you about. And probably maybe back in August 2021, this past August, maybe September. And I don't remember this very clearly, but she pointed out that she'd seen this thing and had told me about it. I do remember her talking about a pair of red eyes out in a field, and how it seemed to be like there was a black mass behind it, but it was at night. All of this has happened at night, except maybe when we were looking at the pictures. I don't remember when that was, but this thing, it looked like to her that it jumped across the road out in front of us, and it's just a lane. It's just a gravel lane. And she was talking about how fast it was. It was just so quick that she said it could even have been like it was in one spot and then appeared in another. And I went out there a while back, last week sometime, and just kind of paced it off. And it had been about 20 feet, I suppose, of space that thing would have had to move across. And I also suggested to her, I said, well, what if there were two? What if she saw a pair of red eyes from one animal or being, and then saw the red eyes from another one and she said anything is possible. It could be anything like that. But I honestly had forgotten about that until more recently when she'd reminded me of this. So the thing that happened most recently is I was sitting in her room. Now you know what? I've skipped ahead a little bit. My wife goes out into the garage pretty regularly, and she goes out and she smokes. And when it's warm, she'll have both of the big overhead doors open, and just stand there and smoke and whatever. When it's colder, she'll just have one open. This all happened last fall, and she would come in and say, "Hey, it sounded like something really big and really heavy was walking out in the yard." And I'd get my gun and I'd go out and I'd check stuff out. Next morning, I'd look for tracks, and it hadn't snowed yet, and everything was kind of dry. In fact, it was really dry. So I couldn't find any sign of anything. But this happened fairly frequently, in that she would say, "Hey, I saw something move, but don't know what it was." And I would go out and check it out and wouldn't find anything. And I've got to take a detour here and tell you a little bit about my wife. She's as black and white as it comes. She doesn't make things up. She's really just to the point on anything she says. If you ask her to describe something, she'll describe it just how it happened. She won't embellish. In fact, she was instrumental in catching a bank robber, because she was able to describe this guy had actually ran out of the back of a bank, and this is before I knew her. Back of a bank, and ran to his getaway vehicle. She was standing there in her backyard, which is where he ran through. And because of her description, the police caught him like within a few hours. She's very factual in anything that she reports. So this is her, and she's telling me that she hears a heavy footfall, things like that. It got, I guess, a little extra strange when she came running in and said something she had seen on one particular night. Now, we live pretty much in the middle. Our house and outbuildings are pretty much in the middle of a corn or bean field, depending on what they've planted that year. We are not near any trees except maybe a few scrub trees kind of along a gully or two. We're not next to a big forest or big thicket of trees or any kind of land feature that would lend itself to concealing something large. So given that, this was very odd. The town that we live. We're actually in city limits, but we're still out in the middle of a field. The town is 300 to 400 population. It's just an Iowa farm town, and we can see. I mean, clearly the lights from the houses and things from this house. And when she was out smoking, she was just standing there, and she said this huge form that was tall enough to block out the lights from the town moved between her and town. So I had questioned her. I said, well, how big would it have had to be? So we went out and we looked at where she was standing or had been standing, and how big it would have had to have been to have blocked out the lights. And we kind of came to the conclusion it had to be at least probably a minimum of 7 feet tall, but probably taller. It was difficult to figure out a good angle, but judging by where she was, it had to be very tall. So that was kind of the first big thing, significant thing that happened, and started kind of alerting that. Now, again, she had heard these heavy footfalls and all that, and honestly, I didn't know what to make of it. I wasn't overly alarmed by those, but this big shape that she saw, that was starting to get alarming. So shortly after that, and I can't tell you exactly how long. It seems like it was just a few days, like maybe anywhere from a week, maybe 2 weeks after that. I'm actually sitting in our room, and I don't know what I was doing, reading or something. It was, again, at night. All of this has happened at night. And it sounded like something was on the other side of the wall, so on the outside of the house, but just a few inches from me. And I heard this low growl. And I've been around big animals all my childhood because I worked with cattle and horses and things like that. It just gave me the impression that something very, very large had just made a barely audible low rumble, and that's what it sounded. It wasn't barely audible. It's just like if you or I kind of went just real low. That was kind of what it was, but it was much louder because that seemed that thing, whatever it was much bigger. So I'm like, whoa, what was that? And it wasn't maybe 2 minutes later that my wife, who was out smoking again, she came in all wild-eyed, and I looked at her and I said, did you hear a growl? And then she is just like, why would you say that? And how did you know? She then told me that she was standing out in the garage like usual, and on this same side of the house. So this side of the house extends. This is where the garage is connected. So it's like this same wall where I heard this growl on the other side of me. That would have been the same wall, except out extended to the garage, where she heard this growl come from also. And she said she described the same thing that I had described. So she comes running in and tells me about this. And we have no explanation. I don't believe that there is an NBA player that has chosen to come out to Tinyville, Iowa, to walk around in our yard at night. I, I mean, there's no explanation for this. That we don't have bears. I think we may have some black bears now in some of the heavily wooded areas, but we don't have any bears close to us. The only big animals would be someone's bull getting out or whatever, but we would have been aware of that. We just don't have an explanation for it. I guess that's it. That's what's happened the most recently.
I appreciate you sharing that with me. So when you guys were parked at the creek, you saw that shadow figure that looked like it was wearing a top hat.
Yes. Or well, she's right here. Would you say that was like a top hat or like a flat brimmed Western hat? She says like a Western hat.
Yeah, that's frightening just because I think I was watching Travel Channel and there was a lady that described that exact same thing. And she was very adamant about it. She was really down to earth and seemed like a good person. You know, it seemed like it frightened her. But I've heard that
Yep.
several times with the shadow people. It just kind of seems like they appear and they observe people, but they're darker than the night. Like they actually have a form to them, but they're just solid
Yep.
black.
Yep. And I've never seen one. Uh, but I know her well enough to know that that's what she saw.
Yeah.
Um,
They say they're an ancient race of beings from like a long time ago, like billions of years ago, from on the other side of the universe. That's what people say. I don't know how they know that information, but
mhm.
it's just difficult to gauge. But it's definitely a reality. I've had an experience with a shadow person, and
Wow.
it was just strange. I don't know, I was watching a paranormal movie. I won't say the name here, but it was a pretty scary movie. But anyways, the power went out in the house when I was watching it, and I walked outside, and this human looking thing stood up out of like this black mass in the ground. Like it was dark outside, but there was a street lamp and it lit up the yard. And this thing stood up right in front of me and it was just staring right at me. And it looked like it had the same shape as the Silver Surfer or just some like built guy that has
Hmm.
his head shaved. But it was solid black and it looked like it stood up out of like a pool of ink. Like I don't know, just this black
Yep.
mass out of the ground and it just stood up out of it. It looked like it was like on its knees and it just stood up. But the weird thing was the power went out when I was watching that movie, and that's why I went outside. And I was trying to find my way outside, and I felt relieved when I finally found the front door because I was upstairs in the house trying to feel my way out with no power. But I feel like when this thing showed up, it like sucked the energy out of the house.
Wow.
Yeah, when it
Well,
manifested.
and so having been an investigator, um, I hear all the time skeptics, and it's good to be skeptical. It's good to question. It's good to want proof. All of that is the way we should be. We should always look at things with a critical eye. But the thing that um, I always wonder about some of these skeptics is they're ignoring a multitude of eyewitness accounts, and that is in and of itself evidence. Um, it's not necessarily the most reliable evidence, and so you have to take it. Um, you have to compile it, and you have to say, well, gosh, thousands and thousands of people have seen something that looks a lot like a Sasquatch or a dog man or shadow people, um, and they are so consistent. And well, like in our case, we'd never heard of that before. We'd never seen that, and and my wife saw one that later on we hear of it being described frequently. The Silver Surfer one, I have heard of people describing that too. It would be nice to have some, scientific proof that you can put in a, in a lab and study.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah, the best
can't.
thing, the best answer I've found is from like psychics and stuff. They say that, I don't know, this kind of stuff is attracted to us, or they follow us and we have abilities, but that's hard to say too, you know what I mean? Just because it can happen to anyone so randomly and it never happens again, how can you say, you got some type of gift just because you experienced something? But at the same time, there's no answer out there.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's something I don't think. Um, I don't think we need to, put our lives on hold and worry about it. It's interesting to study. In fact, I really appreciate what you do. The fact that you do put the time and energy into the study of these things, and I really appreciate that. Um, I forgot to mention something here, and this kind of falls in line with what we're talking about. My understanding is that, and I've heard this, that often an orb or sphere will be seen in relation to a Sasquatch sighting. I have to say, I used to watch a lot of these shows the most popular shows on TV, the ghost hunting shows, paranormal shows, whatever. And I'd see these flecks of dust, and I'd hear them say, "Oh, hey, there's an orb," and we're like, "That is crap. It's not an orb. It's just a fleck of dust, and it's clearly a bug." I always try to be as open-minded about everything as possible, not to just offhandedly discount something. But I had gotten to the point where, okay, this orb thing it's not real, until I saw one. We actually had some cameras in our other house, mostly for security. But we had cameras set up in one particular room, and we were just looking at it one day. It was one night. Seems like everything happens at night for us anyway. I watched as this thing that clearly was not dust and clearly was not a bug, leisurely floated, turned, changed directions across the room, and it had a light of its own. And I thought, well, I've never seen anything like that. And as we watched, we then saw many appear, and they all were going in an exact straight line. They seemed to be aware not to run into each other, which you don't get that with dust. Dust will run, doesn't have a mind, so it's doing whatever. And I watched them with my own two eyes, and I saw these what would be considered orbs moving around in this room. And there it was. It was like, okay, I need to open my mind up a little bit more because of all those shows that had focused on dust particles and bugs as being orbs. I had just said, hey, I'm not gonna fall for that one. But sure enough, saw it with my own two eyes, and there it was. I've seen orbs, actual orbs. So, yeah, I just there's so many things, and again, I look at things from an investigative point of view. How would I investigate this if this was a crime? What evidence would I be looking for? What would be some inconsistencies? And when we're talking about a large 400 to 1,500 pound beast running around Iowa, for example. And I'm not saying that's what was here because I didn't see it, but there have been other reports from the Iowa of Sasquatch sightings and things like that. There's the theory that they are just animals, I think, can be argued against fairly easily because a large animal, even if it lived absolutely in the farthest, most isolated mountainous area possible, if it's on this continent, would have been most likely pictured, discovered. We would know about them, that kind of thing. But this isn't the Rocky Mountains here. This isn't in a vast woodland. This is Iowa, and if I were to take off and just start walking and decided, hey, I'm going to get from point A to point B, and I'm going to go through the most timbered, treed parts of southern Iowa to get there, I guarantee I will be spotted by farmers, people driving along the gravel roads. I will not make it from point A to point B without being detected. So these things, whatever they are, there may be, and this is just obviously all of this is just my theory. There may be they may be biological. I wouldn't argue that, but they are not just a being, just an animal. There is something more to this, because there's no way that something of that size could just hang out in some of the places where they've been spotted.
I know in Missouri, you could definitely go through the woods and never be spotted around here. But what I've noticed with
I
the
agree with
Sasquatch
that.
activity is they can get like 30, 40 yards from you and you won't even see them. Like
Yep.
you'll hear them and they'll be moving around you, but they seem to like know how far back to stay. And
Yeah, I would agree with that with Missouri.
mm-hmm.
We lived in oh, a county over from Cape Girardeau County, a county to the west.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I agree with that. You could just walk from point A to point B, whatever distance, and not be detected there.
But then again, it's almost impossible with like farm dogs. Like they will detect you so
Yep.
quick. I don't even know how they can hear you walking from so far away. But every time like I try to walk, I notice the neighbor's dogs start barking, and they're far away. I'll break a
Yeah.
stick out in the woods, and it's like, how do they know? They're barking from so far away every time I start walking. But yeah,
Yes.
it's you definitely get caught at some point, especially with
Oh
hunters
yeah.
and stuff like that being out in the woods.
Yeah. I know over in Shannon County, that area. That's not where I lived, but I've been over in there and floated there. Um, there's some places that you can imagine how you could just disappear.
Oh yeah, you can
Um,
get
but
lost out there real quick.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And the thing of it is that there's a lot of people now that are out in those areas too, though.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when we were kids, we were all over that place and never saw another human. If you go out there now, it's different. You're much more likely to see some, especially during hunting season, because it seems like more people hunt than they did when we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's just actually more people are out there more, and so whatever these things are, they're they have they got something going for them that keeps them from being spotted or keeps us from being able to investigate them like we would a bear or
Mm-hmm.
cougar or whatever.
They have a sense about them where they're able to know what's going on. But
Yeah.
I drive sometimes from I won't say the exact county, but around Gasconade County down towards Reynolds and Shannon County, and
Hmm.
There was this one time where I'm pretty sure I only passed one vehicle the whole way down there. Didn't have anyone behind me. It was wild, but I mean, it's a bunch of state highways that run through the
Yeah.
Mark Twain. There's really no one out there. But I'm getting up early in the morning and driving. But yeah, sometimes I don't even pass a vehicle on a 2 hour drive through nothing but complete forest territory.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty awesome out there, actually. Yeah.
It is, but at the same time, you don't have cell phone signal. There's a lot of, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of sketchy people out there. There's a lot of good
Yep.
people out there, good, honest, hardworking people, but there is every area has its fair share of places you don't want to go or just leave your car at.
Right. I'm with you on that. And in the little town where I lived down there, you had such a definite line. You had your meth and people that would rob you blind, and then you had your super super good people. There never seemed to be like a middle ground. There wasn't any.
Hmm.
You either had the salt of the earth or you had people you didn't want to be around.
Yeah, and it's getting worse. It's starting to turn into The Walking Dead out there, but what can you do?
Yes, that's a good description.
Yeah,
I've seen them on the streets. Yep.
yeah. So you mentioned your wife was having this shadow or something that was coming around the house in Iowa, and it happened a few times. She
Yes.
heard heavy footfalls and saw red glowing eyes. Now I want to touch base on the red glowing eyes. I've only
Hmm.
seen their eyes shine one time. I've hit them with a spotlight, and it was like a yellowish, maybe almost like a neon green yellow color, but I've heard
Hmm.
the red glowing eyes a lot, but a lot of times people just see the red glowing eyes. Do you think that this could be another type of cryptid, or do you think it's Sasquatch?
Well, um, I think it could be anything.
Hmm.
Um, we know it wasn't a cow or a bear. Um, and as far as it, uh, yes, I think it was a cryptid. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
Why do you
but I
think it was watching her coming around? Do you think it was just curiosity, or do you think it had some type of intent behind it?
so I don't. What I think on that is it is interesting
Hmm.
how it seems like some individuals have a lot more experiences than others who can you can even be in the same area. You could live your life in the same area, and one individual or one family will say, yeah, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened, and yet the other family that lives just down the road a little bit has never seen anything. They've never had any experiences at all. I don't know why. I have no clue, but it does seem that they tend to um, focus on certain individuals or certain groups of individuals, maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, just because they're around and they're in that area, and also like with the people, I mean, they could just be aware. They're open minded, so they're looking for it. But someone who says, that's BS and just doesn't put any thought towards it, when these wood knocks happen or a shadow comes across the edge of the yard, they don't really give a crap. They're not really
yes,
paying attention to it.
that is a good point, and I'm embarrassed to say I'm supposed to be the ex investigator, but if we're walking anywhere, she's the one noticing everything. She sees, she'll see stuff and don't have to point it out to me, and she's just really sharp. So I
Mm.
mean, that could be a factor.
I noticed that your wife relayed a lot of this story to you, and you were there for some of the experiences. How has this affected her and her life, and does she tell very many people about it?
Um, well, first off, we are both um, Christians. We put our faith in God, and I really think that that has been a comfort. It hasn't, we don't wake up in fear at night. We don't. We do believe that there is a power, both good and bad, out in the world, and we just accept that as part of the planet we live on. That's just part of life.
Yeah. So it confirmed that there's a lot more out there than what we're even being told, and a lot of the stuff that people have been saying about these strange cryptids and paranormal activity are actually true.
Yeah, yeah. I think if we were all just given an instantaneous understanding of all that goes on in our world, I think we would be shocked at how much we walk by every day and don't notice
Mm-hmm.
or don't understand.
Yeah.
I think we would just be stunned with what all is actually going on, but we only see the just the surface.
Mm. Yeah. And when that thing comes back around your guys' property, ask it what it wants. It probably won't give you an answer. You'll hear it back there, but I would. Because you never know.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't start gifting something like that just because it hasn't gifted you, and you should never gift something that's a predator like that. But
Right.
if it
Right.
was being nice and leaving like daisies and mushrooms, by all means, leave it some apples. But in this case, I feel like it's more of a predatory thing, or maybe it's just watching you guys. The natives used to talk about how the Sasquatch were the watchers, and I don't know.
Yeah.
People want to think of angels as these creatures that look like us with wings, but we don't know if it's something that looks like a crocodile, and that's pretty to God, because
Yes.
what our understanding is much different than the understanding of beings out there in this universe, the way we perceive
Yes.
everything, anyways.
I agree. We have a very narrow field of view, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's the best thing you can do is ask it what the heck it wants.
Well, and I don't know if she would want to do that. Um,
Yeah, or maybe not even
and
communicate with it at all. I mean, it's hard to say.
yeah, well, with me, so she has had, and I asked her if she wanted to talk to you, and she didn't want to. Um, my main personal, like one-on-one interaction was the growl on the other side of the wall, about 6 inches away from me. That was the big thing that has happened
Mm-hmm.
to me, and that the rest has all been her.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll ask her, and maybe one time we can both be out there at the same time, and and maybe respond or something. But
Yeah, I mean, or
yeah,
tell it it's not welcome, or tell it that if it is welcome, that you guys are gonna live there together peacefully, and you guys share the land together. Because you never know
sure,
if there's a problem. Maybe you cut down a tree or did something, angered this thing. You just
yeah.
don't know it.
I think, and the thing that throws me off though, as far as where we live, it is just absolutely wide open. It, there's I mean, it would have to be, and I've heard of this, and I'm not sure what I think about it, but people talk about them cloaking, being able to become invisible. But, I'm looking outside right now, and I'm thinking, why? Why would it just want to squat out there in the cornfield, and why here?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a mystery that we'll never
Well,
know the answer to, I
they
guess.
they do use all fours, and I mean, corn gets pretty tall, so not all
Yeah,
Sasquatch are 10 feet tall. Like that, it takes them a long time to get that old. It'd be like saying,
right.
all deer are 200 pounds with 200-inch racks.
Well, it's unfortunate that they're not, but yeah.
Yeah. But I was watching this videos on NVTV. I don't know if it was real. Obviously, I wasn't there, and filmed it, but there's this guy in his house, and he's filming outside the window, and there's a cornfield out there, and there's a Sasquatch just walking nonchalant through the corn. Well, it automatically it looks directly at him, like it knows it's being filmed from inside the house, and just ducks immediately.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yes, when the corn is up, like right now the field's completely clear, but when the corn is tall, I mean it'll cover a man for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and on this, there's a lot of things I hear. I've listened to your show before, and like I said, I appreciate what you do very much. And also, you're kind of from my old stamping grounds down there in Missouri too. So, but I know that a lot of folks have laid eyes on these things, and with me, it's just the growl. The rest has been my wife, and I don't know. I don't know what will happen after this, or after today, or after tomorrow, or whatever. If we're gonna have any more experiences, or what? Who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows how it'll go?
Yeah. Could be the end or it could be just the beginning. But yeah, keep me in the loop and let me know if anything else happens.
All right. Well, take good care, and thank you for letting me, I guess, kind of get this off my chest, because we don't necessarily just tell everybody
Yeah.
what we've seen. So
Yeah, I don't have an answer for everyone, but sometimes I feel like if I can just share my stories, it'll help confirm what the other people have seen too. And I feel like that's a pretty good job. I'm not out there solving these things or exterminating Bigfoots, but if I can just, confirm to other people, that I've seen them too, maybe it'll
yep,
help them out.
yep, I agree. It kind of lets us open up and know, hey, we're not by ourselves. And actually, YouTube is kind of shown that there's a lot of folks that have reporting seeing things and stuff like that. So it's been a benefit, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, you have a great weekend, and I appreciate you doing this for me.
Absolutely. Take care, and just touch base with us anytime if you have any other questions.
Absolutely. All right, you have a good one.
All right. Take care.
Mm,
Bye.
bye. All right, thank you, Sean, for sharing your experiences, and I appreciate everyone for watching. If you enjoy Sasquatch Theory, please like and subscribe. And if you can, check out my new Twitter X, my SoundCloud, Facebook, or Instagram. Take care and be safe, everyone.